Alright, YouTube, so Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy is effectively dead, as all the sources are saying, which makes me sad because although I'm not surprised, I was really curious to see where his trilogy would have gone, where it would have taken place, and what would have gone down with it. So that's exactly what this vlog will be about my theories on where his trilogy was going, as well as what kind of trilogy I think he could have done. But overall, let's dive in. Of course, The Last Jedi is somewhat of a polarizing movie, especially among Star Wars fans, but I drew this character that sort of maybe would have appeared in his trilogy, sort of based on the Knights of Ren and the Imperial Guards. I really like how it came out, and something I did notice with Johnson's Star Wars movie is The Last Jedi is that it definitely felt darker and definitely had a lot of red in it, which this character is definitely designed for. So another character I drew based on his potential trilogy is this sort of evil astromech, evil yin to the yang, or yang to the yin rather, of BB-8, but killer BB-8 I call it, which we did see some dark side style droids in the Last Jedi, as well as some of the posters, but the characters weren't really explored much. But I assume his trilogy probably would have done that, as well as given Snoke a little bit more origin, because I doubt his characters or his plan was just to completely get rid of Snoke. I'm sure he had some reasons behind that up his sleeves that he was going to explain in the trilogy, but guess we'll never know. But, you know, it's interesting to see, because I know, like I said, the movie was fairly polarizing among Star Wars fans as far as I know, but I do know we're getting a Star Wars trilogy starring another Ryan Gosling, the Starfighter Star Wars trilogy, which I am super duper excited for, so I'm convinced that'll be even better than what Rian Johnson was planning, but I'm still curious to see what could have happened with it, and hopefully we get some scripts or story or some form of media, like a book even, about what could have gone with his trilogy, because I'm really curious. So overall, I think his vision with The Last Jedi was to have something similar but different, as there were a lot of similarities between The Empire Strikes Back and The Last Jedi, but also a lot of differences, so sort of, you know, balances out, where I like The Force Awakens a lot more, even though I like The Last Jedi, but you know, it was definitely an interesting movie to see the least, so I was curious to see what else would have gone with it. But then, sort of, although I do like the sequel trilogy, they did switch directors around a lot, and that sort of made the story a little complicated at times. This book is Star Wars The Living Force, which is another thing I think Johnson could have gone his trilogy off of, because although I can't take credit for this idea, I was reading a comment on the announcement saying maybe Mace Windu's story could have been explored more, which could be pretty, you know, efficient and effective, and definitely interesting, because we haven't seen a ton of Windu, even though I like to think he's dead, but I would have also loved to see where his origin went before, because, you know, there's also, maybe even if it was just like a live action adaptation of this book, would have been an interesting trilogy, because I have yet to read it, or read it in its entirety rather, because I've been distracted by reading Dune Messiah and the Pokédex, which story for another day. But I do think maybe even some of the Dune books have interesting plots that Johnson could have borrowed a little inspiration for his trilogy from, because I have heard that the Star Wars original trilogy did get a lot of its inspiration from the Dune book. So that's one possible route, or two possible routes I went with, or a few, I don't know. But I know that he has a really good Knives Out trilogy. I'm really excited for the third one that's coming to limited theaters. If I don't catch it in theaters, I'll download Netflix solely for this movie, because I really enjoyed the first one. And I will try to watch the second one sooner, because I know that seems like a really common thing with me, where I see the first and third of the movies, but forget about the second one. I promise I don't do it with a ton of movies, but yeah. And another thing he could have done maybe was explored sort of the in-between time between Anakin, between episodes 1 and 2, because we've all seen the Clone Wars and everything that happened between episodes 2 and 3, but doesn't seem to be a lot between what happened between 1 and 2, or even just before 1, because I know there are some Star Wars series that happened significantly before episode 1, but it's definitely a lot of ground where he could have, you know, made a trilogy with pre-existing Star Wars trilogies without having too much continuity or loopholes, because when you create prequels, sequels, it can be cause sort of plot holes and loopholes, so it's understandable. There's one thing I am certain that would have happened in this trilogy, is it would have had great cinematography and probably a great cast. As we've seen, he's great at casting with Knives Out, but probably wouldn't have that all-star cast, but still nonetheless. So overall, I'm not surprised, but I'm sad that we won't be seeing any more of this trilogy in any way, shape, or form, for now at least. But, you know, with Star Wars, a lot of things that die come back to life, so fingers crossed, but not getting my hopes up. Until then, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay for more soon. Goodbye.